My food is made with love. I'm Lolly Rupert, and today I'm going to be showing you guys how I make my ramen stir-fry ramen, whatever you call it. But this is how I do it. I have my assorted chopped veggies, my essential garlic. I need garlic. Today I'm going to be using some broccoli, and I have some red bell pepper. This is green onions and cilantro. I saved that toward the end. And have some grapeseed oil. I also like to use olive oil, but I have grapeseed oil because I forgot to buy olive oil. And I use veggie broth, but you can use just water if you want, but I'm using veggie broth and soy sauce. You can also use teriyaki sauce, but I'm using soy sauce. And I love hot food, and I would usually put red chili pepper flakes in it, but I'm making it for my kids as well, so I'm going to hold those and just add the sriracha to the end. My God, it's delicious. Okay, so the crazy thing is I just use regular ramen packs, but I don't use the seasoned packs because that's no good. So what we're going to do first is we're going to put just enough water in here to cook down the ramen. Not water, but broth or water, just to cook down the ramen, okay? So I'm going to pour maybe like a cup or a cup and a half. That's probably a cup and a half because I'm using 2 packs. You wouldn't need that much for 1 pack. And it's barely going to cover. It's not going to take long for it to start to boil. You're going to wait for it to boil, and then you're going to add your ramen pack. So just that, ditch the seasoning. You can use the seasoning if you're not a vegetarian or a vegan. It has beef bone in it, so if you're a vegetarian or vegan or whatever the case your situation is, just know this, no matter what this, and this is soy sauce flavor, beef extract. I don't even understand why we need that. Maybe for coloring, who cares? So that's what we're gonna do. And I also use some paprika for color. Let me grab that. Okay, so I use paprika for color. You can also use chili powder. It still works, and you have a little more flavor with that. Paprika's flavor is very subtle, so just know that. I just use it for color. Okay, so I have my fire up. I'm gonna get my packs ready. And actually, just FYI, I'm making this tonight to go with it. It's so good. We love this here. We love it. Sometimes I add walnuts. I might add pineapples to it. Just a lot of different things. I add the green onions or scallions, whatever the case. So good. Okay, so put that to the side. So the water is already heating up. It's beginning to boil. Barely any liquid in there. You might have to add a little bit more. But it's beginning to boil, and we're going to put that in there. And what it's going to do is, oh, very important. I use this spoon, the spork, because I can separate the noodles. You'll see that. I like to separate the noodles so they won't stick. You don't have to do like a minute or so on each side just to soften them up. Then you stir it around. Then we're going to remove. It's looking good. A little bit longer. Yeah, so I'm going to put my oil in here. Oh, I hope I have enough oil. I am running out. I totally forgot to buy some oil. It's a mom life. I do my shopping in the middle of the night online. And so I'm usually like half asleep when I'm ordering stuff. And so something's bound to give. You can kind of press on it to see if it's spreading a little. This one is spreading a little bit. I'll move this one around. See the noodles are a little soft. Flip it. Flip it just like that so you get on the other side. Flip it. we try to do the least amount of liquid as possible because we don't want the noodles to be extra soggy, right? Because we still have to fry them. Now look at that. You see it's starting to soften up and I'm able to break them apart. I think we're still gonna have to put a little bit of liquid in here, so I'm gonna add some because we want it to cook a little bit. We don't want it to be too hard, but we don't want it to be too soft. Yeah, it definitely needs a little bit more. All right, was it like a fourth, a half cup more? And just separate. Make sure that there's no hard noodles in here, no crunchy noodles. That won't be fun. Just continue to separate. This oil is hot over here. All right, so basically we're still just stirring them up, mixing them, not mixing them, but separating them. They're tender. You can kind of see the color changing. They're getting a little bit darker. They're not as bright. And you're just making sure you're cooking out all of the liquid that's in there so that the noodles are just slightly tender. Okay, again, you don't want to overcook the noodles, but you don't want to undercook them because that would be gross. All right, so I thought that I was ready to remove the noodles from the heat, but there's a couple of hard noodles in there, so I'm just adding a little more veggie broth. And it's only going to take a few seconds to soften those few noodles up. And once we do that, we can go ahead and transfer the noodles. All right, at this point, I'm satisfied. So we're going to go ahead and take them out and put them into a separate bowl temporarily. And you can rinse out the pan, or you can just go ahead and transfer the oil, put the oil into it, just like that, like I just did. Heat up the oil really good, and you're going to add your garlic. I love garlic, so I'm going to add plenty of that. You don't want to burn their veggies, and especially you don't want to burn the garlic. So as soon as it gets into that oil, you're going to start moving it around, keep everything moving. You're going to add your other veggies. See, the veggies are generally hard, so you kind of want to cook them just a little bit so that they're a little softer to go, because they're going to be in those soft noodles. So you don't want extra hard veggies. So you're going to do those first, get those in the oil. You can even add a little bit more oil before you add your noodles. So you're going to go ahead and continue to stir them in the oil, heating them up. Add a little more oil. I'm getting low on my oil. Add a little more oil for the noodles. Now it's time to get that oil hot. You're going to add your noodles into the veggie mixture. And you're going to just go ahead and heat them up, continuously stirring. Now while you're stirring it, you're going to notice that the noodles are really like hard to separate because they're a little stiff. They're dry noodles, so they're a little stiff. But they will loosen up once you add teriyaki or your soy sauce. I'm going to add the paprika in there right now, and I do the paprika for color. Then I add my soy sauce. You don't want to, soy sauce is pretty salty, so you don't want to overdo it. I'm doing about 2 tablespoons of soy sauce in there, and that little bit of soy sauce starts to help soften up the noodles because it begins to lubricate them along with that oil. And all you're pretty much doing is continuously stirring it around. In my case, I'm stirring it up to get the paprika evenly dispersed throughout the noodles, and because it's kind of like it'll clump up a little bit because it's the powder and the dry noodles. So as you can see, it's starting to coat all the noodles. I even bring in a wooden spoon just to help me to toss in those vegetables a little bit more. And I'm just working it through. And at this point, it's pretty much done. I'm just working it through, and boy, does it smell good. And so this is what it looks like before I add the cilantro and the green onions. As you can see, obviously those things are optional, so you could just eat it just like this. But I like the cilantro and green onions, gives a lot of flavor. So this is what it looks like. And then, all right, and so I added my cilantro and my green onions, and I am ready to dig in, and so are my kids. They are hounding me at this point. They really like this, and